I'm reading the book of Luke, chapter 14. Well, I read it yesterday and I had a couple of thoughts regarding something that happened over the weekend. So, Luke chapter 14, I'll start at verse 1. It says, "Now it happened as he went into the house of one of the rulers of the Pharisees to eat bread on the Sabbath, that they watched him closely. And behold, there was a certain man before him who had dropsy. And Jesus, answering, spoke to the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? But they kept silent. And he took him and healed him and let him go. Then he answered them, saying, Which of you, having a donkey or an ox that has fallen into a pit, will not immediately pull him out on the Sabbath day? And they could not answer him regarding these things." Now this was Luke chapter 14, verses 1 to 6. And then I moved to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, that book where Apostle Paul speaks about imshado, married people and single people and all of that. But there's one particular verse verse 6, where he says, "But I say this as a concession, not as a commandment." This is 1 Corinthians chapter 7, where he was talking about, how married couples should be and all of that. So you can go and read about that. That he was basically addressing husbands and wives. And in verse 6, let me start with verse 5 to give context. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 5 and 6, where Apostle Paul was speaking to married couples. In verse 5, he says, "Do not deprive one another, except with consent for a time, that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, so that Satan does not tempt you because of your lack of self-control." Verse 6, he says, "But I say this as a concession, not as a commandment." Now, we have Jesus who was speaking to lawyers and Pharisees in Luke chapter 14 regarding, do they think it's lawful to heal on a Sabbath? And then also we have in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, where Apostle Paul is addressing married couples, husbands and wives, about, what they do in their houses or in their spaces or in their marriages. And what I was thinking about, Tuguti, sometimes, people, we make rules or we make things and sometimes those rules and things that we do and we make and we decide upon, especially in a group session, it actually can become a limiting factor to effectiveness, a limiting factor to situational leadership or situational problem solving, or basically just effectiveness. Ngoba here was Jesus seeing a man who needed some healing, and just because it's a Sabbath, lawyers and Pharisees, they couldn't even answer him. They didn't know what to say. They probably knew what their, book of rules or their way of life or culture or what they usually do or what the standardized response should be and all of that. Because, they're lawyers, they're Pharisees, but here was a situation that they were faced with in front of them, and they couldn't answer when Jesus says there is a solution to what this person has or needs. or what they are facing, there's a solution to it. So do you think it's lawful to heal on a Sabbath? They couldn't answer. So it really became like some kind of a limiting factor, and especially if you create a rule or a system or something that is ingathini, something that is usually to say yes or no, or to judge or not judge, or where you're like, no, sorry, I won't do that because so that's what I'm saying. Some of these systems and some of these rules, or some of these things that we decide upon, especially as a group or a company of friends or an organization, they might just be limiting factors to your own effectiveness, and making you to not respond to what is urgent needs or real life needs and that kind of a thing. So sometimes we need to look at those things that we do and really ask ourselves, is this really still effective, or is this not really presenting a kind of limitation to your own thinking, to my own thinking, or to your own progress, that kind of a thing. And I think those are valid, things or thoughts and conversations that one can have with self or with friends and that kind of a thing. And when it comes to what Apostle Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 6, he says, "But I say this as a concession, not a commandment." That he presented something to married women in terms of advice, or to husbands and wives, in terms of advice on how to deal with practical real life situations. Because like I say, marriage is a covenant, and God is a God of covenant. And I refuse to believe ukuthi umshado is supposed to be some world of lawlessness and ungodliness and all of these ugly things that I've been experiencing and perceiving as if they are hiding behind some marriages. I think marriage is a beautiful thing, and praying to get into umshado nami, or angasho kanjalo, having been a woman praying, let me say it the way I am instead of the way I've heard being said. Nami being a woman who's praying for her husband and praying to meet the one I'm made for, and to be married, with him, and to become a husband and a wife with him, along with him. It's important to me to know that because of what I read in the Bible, and because of my faith as well, Uguti, I'll be able to continue to exercise my faith, while a wife to that special guy, to that awesome guy, to the beautiful guy that God, has made me for. So even when Apostle Paul was giving that advice, he can make a concession. He can say, I say this as a concession. So sometimes we can make concession as human beings, or as systems, or as organizations, or as leaders, or as just simply human beings. You can make a concession, just say what the reason is, instead of just being so bent or so almost like staccato. But instead of being so saying, no, I'm not gonna do this, instead of just being so unflexible, because yet again, you do not want to find yourself being your own limiting factor to your own progress, or being a limiting factor to an available solution, and something that is, that will, you don't want to be a limiting factor to what you need to do, to your own situational leadership, to your own dealing situationally and on time with a situation or a problem solving that is on time, for the good works to proceed, or for you to just get that which you need. So why am I speaking about this? About concessions and rules and not being a limiting factor or anything like that. To me, there was a time some weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I was just thinking, some of these rules and some of the things that I see, it's like sometimes you create a rule because some rules seem to have been created to just work against people thinking, where someone is like, no, I'm doing it by the rules, and it's like, yeah, but I mean, that one particular rule that you're talking about or making reference to, or whatever it is, it doesn't seem to be helpful right now, and yet again, this is something that is written, in the Bible. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12. Again, it's Apostle Paul who was speaking, and he says, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. That, yeah, you might know something, but it might not be helpful. And if something is not helpful, we learned not so many days ago, Uguti. Okay, well, a few voice notes previously. Uguti, there is a fruitfulness which is a benefit to answering to urgent needs. Now, some people who are like, no, but this is what I was told to do. It's like you literally just indirectly wanting to say no to someone, and then you use some kind of a clause or some kind of a rule, or whatever the situation may be, and that's not very helpful. And then you ask yourself, why are you not being fruitful in a certain area? Do you hear what I'm saying? So sometimes we need to think about those things, such as situational leadership, not being your own limiting factor to your own progress, and those kind of things. And on-time solving of a problem sometimes is a good thing. Problem solving. Yeah. So you can make a concession and those kinds of things. Where am I going with this? I'm going to what happened to me over the weekend on Saturday. On Saturday, somebody sent me a cash send, because I just wanted to get some bread. I've been speaking about this for a while now, but I wanted to get some bread. And then when I get to, where I wanted to go and make that withdrawal, Emajuba, the small gate was closed, the narrow gate. I'm a Christian woman, okay? That is out there. That is just the truth. And I was like, okay, the gate is closed, so what do? I was like, okay, I'll just enter where, cars enter, right? And I went there, little step down, go to the ATM. And already I was just thinking, I've been here before where the gate has been closed, the smaller gate. And I walked in, I walked into, where the cars drive in, because, you can walk in through there as well. And already I was just thinking, God, please, these monitoring spirits are the most irritating thing ever. And all they care about is their speed of response or whatever the situation may be. And I'm really not interested in that. Right now, I just want to get, some bread and some cool drink or something to drink or whatever it is. I am hungry. I haven't eaten in some time. And that's what it was. Monitoring spirits or whatever it is, or wickedness that is hiding in the invisible and all of that, I was just like, you need to deal with that, because I think it's and it's not a culture of people using what is supposedly their spiritual gifts that they're supposed to be using, because they want to cause irritation instead of using their supposed gifts or access to the invisible, to equip others for their works of ministry. So I get to the ATM, I do what I do, and I was just like, good God. So there I was with a couple of ATM slips printed out, and I couldn't get the 100 rand that was sent to me. And I was just like, this is so irritating. And then I walked all the way to Pick n Pay to do it yet again. And again, nakhona, I was just like, I see. You know, observing and perceiving, the environment around you as well. And I was just like, Anyway, God, you're faithful. I've asked and somebody has sent, so this needs to be usable to me, in this now time, today, on that Saturday evening, because I want to get something, to eat, just the bread and something to drink. Oh my goodness, don't you think I get to the Pick and Pay apsa ATM nakhona, yenza umdlalo wakhona. Only for, and then I was just like, you know what, it's okay. Because the APSA SMS will say you have received a cash send, right? And it'll give you the digits that you need to press at the ATM and all of that. And I mean, I know the people are asked. Again, this is no secret. I know which people I ask or which numbers I send requests to and all of that. And relationship says I know what usually the pins are. So it's either, again, I hate being mindful of the irritating spirits or the irritating part of those who just want to play some tech game or whatever. Anyway, so I know what the pins usually are. And relationship also says, I know that what I've asked for, but I know who gives a little extra sometimes or who gives generously and all of that. So when I get to the ATM, I will do that, to access the funds or the money according to whom I've asked, who usually sends me through that channel, and that kind of a thing. So what it felt like those 5 in total, attends. Somebody is like, let me see how her memory works. It felt like that. It felt like there's just this boastful thing that just says, let's see what she does now, Meanwhile, sometimes when I receive a cash send SMS that comes from, a cousin of mine in Joburg, it would, good God, it's like monitoring spirits or even looking at blogs and just being such an irritation unnecessarily. But anyway, let me explain what I mean. When she sends me a cash send, it used to send all my names and my surname as if I'd forgotten. And then it was basically just superfluous. It was just too much information to me, because it's information that I know. Like, why are you writing all of that? And it felt like a time when Ulandi wrote a blog about me writing all my names and everything and my ID number. And I was just like, what nonsense is this? So anyway, I was like, okay, that's weird. So when my cousin would send me a cash send, it'll say my name, it'll send me the number for the ATM, and then I will receive an SMS that says what the PIN is. However, when I get a same cash sent to me, let's say maybe from my mother or from another lady in Pretoria, or someone else, one of the few people that I know or usually ask, then I don't get the same treatment or the same. There's no consistency. Like, I wouldn't get an SMS that says, "Hello, Cindy Siwe, ban Mkhize, this is the number," or and it gives you the number, and then some long SMS again that says, "This is the PIN." Do you know what I mean? It's as if there's a test run that wants to see what do I prefer, what do I not prefer, what kind of information do I want to receive from, receiving a cash or money send through this cardless banking system. And because now the supposed people behind the test run, they are so cocky or so self-loving that they're so boastful of their systems. They're like, let's just send it to her and just see how she responds. Because, I mean, we have access to see how she responds or how she receives our systems or what she says or, or we want to see how she thinks. That's what it felt like. And I was just like, this is so irritating. So anyway, the 5 attempts on Saturday night, eventually I was like, I'll calm down. I mean, I wasn't angry, but I was just like, this is so irritating. And so eventually I walked back, to Majuba, and it worked. I got an SMS, and even the SMS I received, from the lady who sent me, it was, but anyway, I'd also tried that, but eventually it worked. So I had to now say, thank you, God, that it just worked, okay? And I was just thinking, I wouldn't send someone a cash send and not send them the PIN number, okay? If this is someone testing, if me giving tithe or if me giving a church or in whatever manner I would do that, if I do that, am I able to discern where a cash send SMS comes from? Do you know what I mean? It's like, it feels like a network of monitoring spirits that want to just check all these things, and meanwhile, ngathi bayayidlalela nje, and here I am praying to God and asking and being grateful when I do receive that which I've asked for. Why I keep asking through SMSs or callbacks or that kind of a thing, it's actually none of your business if you are just a monitoring spirit. You know what I mean? So the point I'm coming to is that just because I used the entrance of vehicles in Majuba, then I had to go through that whole nonsense of what is just a game to people who just want to entertain themselves and just ridicule what is my faith. And that's just unjust, and that is just irritating, and it is just an utter nuisance. So it's like, so what are you trying to see? What am I going to do from that point onwards? Am I going to go back to the Bible to see, oh my goodness, Kandi, what's going? No, it's not about that. My faith is my faith, and stop trying to exercise some ugly, boastful wickedness or some ugly power over that, which I do and that which I believe in and that who I am. This is not a faith-based war that's going on here. There shouldn't be a faith-based war going on. Oh, this one says we're Christian, let's see how strong you are in your Christianity. You should not be testing my Christianity. You have issues with my faith, go to Jesus Christ. Take it up with God and leave me be, Let me glory in the God that I glory in, that made me. Let me exercise my faith the way I exercise my faith. It's not even about you letting me. It's just leave me be. And if you are a person who really wants to be competitive and you want to treat other people as if they are some kind of lab rats, seriously, you need to really check yourself. Why don't you do that to your own self and maybe your own children, and just leave me alone, So that's that. Like, it was really irritating and annoying. But eventually it worked. I got that which I asked for. And I was grateful to God. And these are the choices and things that one has to now start making because of a couple of people who are trying to see your faith level and test how you behave or how you respond. Let's say I responded in a rude manner. Then what are you going to say? Oh my God, you're so rude. And then what? Because at the end of the day, I just needed some bread and something to drink to sit down and have that meal because I was really hungry. So that should not be a source of entertainment for those who believe ukuthi, they've got the tech know-how of how to, bypass some systems, or how to, pre-program or preset certain things, or whatever the situation may be. And stop testing the faith of other people, because that's just like, what? Really, situational leadership is an important thing, and on time responses to that which is needed are, it's like what God promises leads to fruitfulness. Now, don't add other things to that. We all know what the gift of God does and all of those things. So really, it was really unnecessary. And it reminded me of, again, the time some months ago now, where a same situation happened where I needed water. And that's when I had that gift card, that was loaded with a voucher that I'd received from church, from a Pretoria North church. Anyway, and I was like, hey, I need water. It's a Saturday night. Let me walk, so that I can wake up in the morning, and do my version of a bath there, and you know what I mean, and go to church on Sunday morning. Oh my goodness, don't you think? Obviously, it was after 6 p.m. and I knew when I get to Amachuba, it'll be closed to the smaller gate. So what does that mean, that I must just choose to not? But no, why should I? I could have chosen to not, but I was like, why should I choose that when I can just take a nice walk, get myself some water, and as well as, a packet of, chips, and that's what I wanted to do, and then just to walk back. And that's how I got there, and I did that. And one of the girls was like, hi, you've been here so many times now. And I was just like, not really. But anyway, and that's how, after I left, when I say one of the girls at the till, when I was paying, she had said, Duty, I'd been there so many times earlier in that day because I had that gift card and the voucher that I was using to shop at Checkers. So in the evening when I went back, I was like, hey, I need to go back and get some water because I needed water. So because I entered again through the where cars enter, by the time I walked out, my gift card disappeared, basically. And I was just like, again, is this supposed to be some kind of a faith-based war or faith-based game? She didn't use the narrow gate. She came to the shop after 6 p.m. So let's exercise our invisible presence or whatever it is and cause a disturbance. And then that led to basically me not having that gift card anymore. So those things really just need to stop. Like that kind of entertainment, it needs to stop. That behavior just needs to end. And yes, I did go to the Bible, shamelessly so. And it's actually not a shame to read the Bible or to read the Word of God. It's profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, and for instruction in righteousness. And I love to read the Word of God. That is something that I just do. I study it, and it means something to me to see it, the good parts, more so prospering in the thing, in whatever pleases God, accomplishing whatever pleases God, and prospering in what God has sent it. And sometimes I get to see that, and sometimes I don't. Do I appreciate it when people are just playing out what I've read in the Bible and like for me to see that they are playing it out? I just look and I just walk past, Are they trying to test my discernment? To test my discernment for what? Like I was not made to have my discernment tested by people. I don't appreciate that either. Anyway, so Luke chapter 13, verse 22, 23, and 24. More so, basically, verse 24. So, I'll start at 22 and I'll read up to 24. Luke chapter 13. It says, this is Jesus Christ. It says, and he went through the cities and villages, teaching and journeying toward Jerusalem. Then one said to him, Lord, are there few who are saved? And he said to them, strive to enter through the narrow gate. For many, I say to you, will seek to enter and will not be able. Okay, then someone might be thinking, that's not very detailed, you talk about narrow gate and wada. And okay, well, Matthew chapter 7 is a little bit more detailed. Let me just find it now. Matthew 7 verse something. Where is it? Okay, we'll start at verse 13. Okay. Yeah. Okay, Matthew chapter 7, verse 13 and 14. It says, enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leads to destruction. And there are many who go in by it. Because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it. So I'm saying that the book of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 13 and 14 is a little bit more, detailed in terms of, it speaks about there's a narrow gate, there's a wide gate, and there's a broad way. So that's 3 types of entrances, okay? And where I go and buy the things I need at Checkers here at Amachuba, there's 3 entrances that I see anyway. The narrow gates that I usually like to go through. And when that is closed, I use the entrance of the vehicles, which has no gate. And then there's another gate where that's usually used by the people who actually work, at the complex. So that's 3 entrances. And the one I use when the narrow gate is closed, there's no gate. And cars usually go there and people also walk into there, So is this the part where I'm now supposed to say, can you guys please just, take a concession and stop creating a nuisance and doing nuisance behavior in your supposed invisible, and you saying you love working in speed and you want to calibrate, or you want to, calibrate yourselves on how quickly you can respond and all of that nonsense. It's really, it's annoying. And it's just irritating. But yeah, you have a choice, to deal righteously or to just stop being an irritation, and stop causing a nuisance, and stop playing this stupid, not stupid, but it's just an ugly game. It's so unnecessary, It's really unnecessary, and I don't know where that is defined as business activity. I'm not interested to even know where that is defined as business activity. It's none of my business, but yeah, that's that. So anyway, there's 3 entrances, and when the narrow gate is closed, I use the entrance where vehicles go in, because I would need water, I would need food, and I do not want to be a limiting factor to that which I need. That's basically what it is, and that's basically the simple truth. And it says in verse 14, because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, And there are a few who find it. Is this the part where I'm now supposed to say, why is the narrow gate being closed at 6 p.m.? So are we saying after 6 p.m. whoever goes into the shop to buy between 6 and closing time, between 6 p.m. and closing time, those people are just being set up for some kind of distraction? No. I hope that's not the truth, or that's not the situation, because I mean, it does happen that after sunset or after 6 p.m. you realize that I actually need something. If you're cooking and you think you realize that there's a certain ingredient that you don't, you want to quickly go to the shop and get that which you need and come back home and cook and continue, so that you have your meal as best prepared as it can be, because now you're not going to say, the narrow gate is closed. Well, I'm not going to say that when I start cooking. I'm not going to say, the narrow gate is closed, I'm not going to get groceries. So what? Am I sleep hungry? I would love to choose to not sleep hungry and say, no, I'm going to walk and go and get, or I'll drive and go and get that which I need and come back. So, if the narrow gate is closed, it doesn't mean that I shouldn't be getting the things that I need from the store, because I would like to believe that those who are aware of what Matthew chapter 7 says, they are responsible enough, or they are good enough people to say no, but it's not like we are trying to set people up to some kind of distraction by closing the narrow gates at 6 p.m. Come on, guys. Like really. And there are workers walking through the wider gate. And the entrance of the vehicles is a broad way. Should we say now that is a setup for what? Some kind of a distraction? It shouldn't be. Well, I hope it's not. So, but anyway, my exercising my faith, as best as I can, I try to get the things that I need before 6 p.m. because they close the gates at 6 p.m. Sometimes it's just before 6 p.m. It's been at random times, a couple of times, very few times, but I try as best as I can, as far as reasonably possible to get whatever I need. If I need to get what I need before the narrow gate is closed. That's basically what it is. And in closing, I just want to say, don't be your own limiting factor to progress or to on-time response to that which is urgent. That's basically a real life thing, a practical example, something that happens and something that one can decide. It's a choice. And when those lawyers and Pharisees couldn't answer Ujesu, that's what I began to think, Kuguti. Lawyers themselves are the ones who know such words as concession, or other people say leeway. Other people say things like, I'll make a special arrangement for you. There's various other words or terms or that basically say the same thing. Someone would say, I'll bend the rule a little here. Others would like to say things like, I'm going to do you a favor here, or whatever it is. We know these things as human beings, but it's as if some things you just want to set them up to just test. How do they think? Or how do they respond to situations? Why are you testing people, how they respond to situations and how they think? Like, where does this kind of business activity come from? It's weird. Why are we not just simply living and you ask for what you ask for, and let someone say yes, and give you that what you ask for, what you need, and that kind of a thing. Let me take you to 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 7 and 8. Because really, If I buy something after 6 p.m. at Checkers, it should not, or if I need to go and use an ATM after 6 p.m. at Checkers, it that is not, that is not me signing up for some kind of just unnecessary, unjust, behavior from those who like to flex being in the invisible. I'm not signing up for distraction by going to get things that I need from a shopping complex which says it's serving the people, or it's giving a service, or it's rendering a service to the community or to the public, or to the general public. It says Checkers better and better. So I would like to believe that when a narrow gate is closed, it's not because, of what others are trying to make me to feel when I actually go through that wide or the broad way, and maybe someone in management or management might not be aware that this is how people are playing this out, I don't know, but it's only God who knows. However, let me read 1 Corinthians in closing, chapter 8, verses 7 and 8, which says, "However, there is not in everyone that knowledge. For some, with consciousness of the idol until now," is it that one? 1 Corinthians 8, this is, okay, hold on. Let me just find it. Okay, I found it. It's not 1 Corinthians 8, it's 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 7 and 8. It says, "But as you are bound in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in all diligence, and in your love for us, see that you abound in this grace also. I speak not by commandment, but I am testing the sincerity of your love by the diligence of others." So, guys, the Word of God says, I am testing the sincerity of your love by the diligence of others. So someone, those who are diligently trying to, to be faithful to Nkulunkulu, or in applying what they learn in the Bible, in a good way, not in a way that seeks to harm people, but in a Jeremiah 29 type of way, 29 verse 11 type of way, to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you hope in the future, trying to exercise their faith towards good works, that kind of a thing. And that diligence is something that is rewardable by uNkulunkulu. And it is people who are trying to delight themselves in the Lord, because they have needs, they have prayers that need to be answered, they have desires in their hearts. And people who are just simply living according to their faith measure, that has been given to them, And I think really, to do good to others and to do good to others as you would like to be done to you is really important. And it's something that we just need to remember, I don't appreciate this game that's being played by ATNs, because what are you trying to do? You're trying to make me to regret that I've chosen to use cardless banking? I mean, for goodness sake, that was just with one bank, which is Capitec. And then an old account from Standard Bank, they did what I thought was a really honorable thing, to send me an SMS and say all of those charges that they had, when I wasn't using it, that they were wiped out, and I gave glory to God. And there was one day when I was like, let me go and see, see this word, be manifested. And I printed out, and really, they were wiped out. Only for then, again, those who want to flex the use and all, and their game, umdlalo wabo lo of technology, where when I went to go and see ukuthi, is this still true? What do I do with the Standard Bank? What will I do with that Standard Bank ATM? But because I had written about cardless banking, because of what I'd experienced at Capitec, someone then decided, okay, let's see what we do with her Standard Bank ATM card. And then it starts making some error messages. And I was just like, this is absolute nonsense, because it's not about unequal scales. What I experienced at Capitec is not exactly the same as what I experienced at Standard Bank. But just because I wrote about what I experienced at Capitec, and it made me to start seeking to use cardless banking, then someone is probably saying, but the word of God says, unequal scales is an abomination to God. And that's a very ugly use, because what I experienced at a Standard Bank, a solution or what was done there, something was done to solve that, and I gave glory to God. But then it doesn't mean it didn't mean it's okay for people to now decide to create some error message when I just go and verify, or when I checked in the last few times I checked, what is the status of that? Because the decision I made with Capitec was a long was a long process to come to that decision, and it was like day in, day out of seeing what I was complaining about or what I was not happy about for me to come to that decision. So for me to fairly deal with Standard Bank, I have to experience, because I gave glory for what Standard Bank decided to do. Okay, that was awesome what they did. But then the decision on how I was going to deal with the Standard Bank or with that account, I had to come to that, what must I do with this account now, since I've started using cardless banking, instead of someone to sit there and decide on my behalf to just create an error message. I don't think that was protecting me. That was just you making a very misplaced decision, and trying to step ahead. It's like trying to move ahead of me experiencing what I experienced with that particular bank, and me coming to the knowledge that I need to come to, and come to a decision that I need to come to in terms of that bank account, because when you have two children and they're not exactly the same, well, they're not the same, because they're two different individuals. Just because one does wrong in one area, it doesn't mean now that you're going to exercise a punishment to both. Okay, I don't think I would do that, So what I'm saying is, whoever did what they did to that Standard Bank account basically moved ahead in a misplaced or unnecessary or unbefitting manner. I'm standing here now trying to figure out, were they thinking of some word of unequal scales as an abomination to God, Meanwhile, I had two different experiences with both banks. But anyway, well, that's where we are, and that's how it is. So the word concession is the word concession. It is there, it is usable, it is known by people. But anyway, the diligence in people, exercising their faith is also another thing. But for me, if I go to a stall, a checkers after 6 p.m., I don't appreciate this game that's being done, and it needs to stop. That's all I'm saying. So, who knows ukuba whose love is being tested by uNkulunkulu through the diligence of others? Let's each ask ourselves that question. Okay. That's that. It wasn't as short as I thought, but short enough. Okay.